Hey, welcome, Carm Capriato, Remarkable Results Radio's episode 471. You know, legacy aftermarket trainer Vin Waterhouse is back, and he's going to talk about intensive labor rates and the power of benchmarks. And as always, listen to learn just one thing.
It's going to continue to go more. The higher percentage will be labor, and the lower percentage will be parts, just the way the vehicles are designed. And again, I go back to my Toyota Tesla example. 30,000 parts versus 10,000 parts. That's a 2/3 deduction in parts alone.
Welcome, aftermarketers, to Remarkable Results Radio. Listen to learn just one thing from today's episode on your journey to remarkable results. Hi, friends. Carm Capriato here, the Aftermarket Podcast Guy. Now, Remarkable Results Radio is so proud to partner with Napa Auto Care in the 2020 Napa Expo, coming to Las Vegas, April 6th through 9th, 2020. Join members of the Napa family and find out the latest news and most up-to-date industry information. Mark your calendar, April 6th through 9th, 2020. Then contact your Napa store for all the details and get enrolled. I'll see you in Las Vegas. Hey, I know how much you rely on the podcast to keep you informed on trends, insights, and ideas that help support you and your business. Now, thanks for allowing me to continue my passion to help and support aftermarket professionals in their quest for prosperity at both home and business. We work hard to make every episode provide you ingredients for your success recipe. And I hope you get a chance to visit the books page on the website. Lots of great stuff there. And you know, I love my coffee, always drinking coffee. And I recently opened a Buy Me a Coffee link at remarkableresults.biz/coffee. And if you love what we do here on the Aftermarket Premier Podcast, well then, let's Java. Hey, today we're into a few very heavy topics such as intensive labor rates, transparent pricing, and the power and the value of benchmarks. Hey, Vin Waterhouse from the Waterhouse Group and I are going to jump into the changing parts to labor ratio, and as he sees more diag time being sold versus parts, you need to think about that. Now, the future vehicles, namely EVs, are going to have less parts. Therefore, we will sell less parts. So how will you adjust to make up the gross profits that our traditional parts to labor model has provided? This dialogue needs to happen so you can start to assimilate and understand the evolution you need to take on as we move rapidly into these changing financial challenges and make changes to your labor rate. As far as KPIs, key performance indicators, are concerned, now you benchmark yourself on your own set of goals or performance standards and that of top performers in the industry. Vinny and I also get into the reality and impact the internet has on access to pricing information. He has a conceptual change to parts markup because of access to pricing so easily available on the internet. Gotta listen to that. Now find the talking points and the password for a download Vin offers you at remarkableresults.biz/E471. Now, some straight up talk from Vin Waterhouse. Hey, warm welcome to Vin Waterhouse, president and founder of the Waterhouse Group. Hello, Vin.
Hello, Carm.
Welcome for round 2, and I hope this isn't our last. I'm sure it won't be. We had you back in episode 427. We actually recorded it at the TST, big event.
Yes, we did.
That was an awful lot of fun. I dragged you kicking and screaming into the studio.
Our first visual connection in over 20 years.
I know, it was great. We even had dinner together, and you did a great keynote, and I was, so impressed with it that a lot of what 427 was about, Vin, was about the things you talked about in the keynote. Any update, Vin, on what we talked about in episode 427?
I would say to take off from where we left off, we were talking about parts pricing transparency and what our shops are having to go dealing with the internet. And that's always been in other parts stores. That's a part of it. But what is even more ominous in the very near future is the number of parts per vehicle. My research has shown that the average Toyota has 28 to 30,000 parts in one vehicle. Now, that's if you count every nut, bolt, washer. As an example, an alternator could have 100 parts in it. But think about the number of manufacturers and parts, 28 to 30,000. Well, the Tesla has only 7 to 10,000. And as we evolve from gasoline-driven engines, right, to electronics, that's 2/3 less parts that we're going to have available to manufacture and sell. And our shops are going to be faced with this, and it's going to be an opportunity. They're going to be faced with making their money in labor, not in parts. Just like electricians, plumbers, carpenters, lawyers, accountants, they make it in labor, not in parts. The good news is, and I'll stop, the good news is this. Even though the revenue is 50-50, the profit in labor is double what it is in parts.
We all learned a while back that parts and labor were going to be 50-50 of your revenue. And with what you're saying is if we're going to install less parts, then that formula has to change. But if I was a naysayer and I said, Vin, I get it, I understand, but aren't we like 20 years away from being worried about that?
Well, I drove by 4 or 5 Teslas today on my way home from Boston, taking my wife to the hospital. The electronic cars are here. They've been out for a long time. The Prius was, right, they came back out 10 years ago. And as we go more and more electronic, we're selling less and less parts per driven mile. Ask any technician.
I think I know the answer to the question that I asked you, and that is we can't start talking about this stuff soon enough. The old labor factory story that you had many, many years ago was even discussed 10 years even before that. We would probably be in a lot better shape as an industry. There's an awful lot of people that are struggling making 1 or 2% net operating income. And so if this is a trend that we have to be worried about, I'm happy to be talking about it.
We used to say someday this is going to happen. Well, someday is today.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And it's think about the time we invest in diagnostics. If we don't have a diagnostic labor rate that really takes into account that we're probably not selling a part for that hour, and how many hours of diag time are we billing without parts, it's a big issue.
Yes, it is. Well, the average shop bills 334 hours per month. That's the average number of hours sold. There was a time when 80% of those hours were with parts and labor. Today, only about 30% of those hours are billed with parts and labor. The rest of those hours are you're still doing the work, the talent, the expenses, but the profit per hour is much, much less if you use your standard labor rate because you're selling less parts per driven mile. So our guys are going to be coerced. They're not going to have a choice. We're going to have a standard labor rate where you sell parts and labor, a labor-intensive rate where you sell the parts at cost and use your recovery rate, which is your labor-intensive rate, and then a diagnostic rate. And it's all going to be from cost up, not what the guy charges down the street. Luckily, we have a formula for that. And your listeners can go on my website and type in a password, and it'll calculate their profit per billed hour to the penny. And every time they do a job where they make less than what their normal profit is, they would sell that part at cost and use this separate labor rate, and they'll make their normal profit.
How do we get the password?
Vin Waterhouse, Napa Auto Care.
Oh, my God. Thank you. Broke the code. Thank you.
All one word, Vin Waterhouse, Napa Auto Care. No hyphens, no dashes. It's such a simple password that I think any hacker with their salt would never bother with it. They can't be any value there.
If they knew what you did. Yeah,
right.
I get it.
Vin Waterhouse, Napa Auto Care. And, Carm, your listeners can access it from their phone.
And this is going to help them consider that a different labor rate when there's no parts included.
What it will do, it'll calculate what percent their business is labor and what is parts. It'll tell them to the penny what their gross profit is per billed hour between parts and labor. And so every time they do a job when they know they're making less than that normal profit, they would sell the part at cost and use the separate labor rate. Now, it takes everything from below average just to average profit, and it won't charge 1 cent more than your average profit. So you never price yourself out of the market. You just stop losing money.
You just said sell a part at cost. You just rocked my world here. Did you mean to say that?
Yes. Sell the part at cost as long as you use the labor-intensive labor rate.
Got it. Okay. All right.
Because the labor-intensive labor rate has your parts profit built into it.
There's an awful lot of discussion. I was in Chicago this past weekend, and we were talking about this with a group of service professionals from Illinois. There are some that say, interesting, we need to be worried about this. And there was this other half that said, hey, listen, this is the value that I give. I'm going to make my 50, 55, or 60% on parts, and it just doesn't matter. I don't have to worry about that. My customer base has come to accept the fact that this is the money I need to make because I'm paying a great and living wage to my people.
I think that is very true but it's going to be for the minority. Not every shop owner is going to have that courage and that self-confidence to say, I am worth it and take it or leave it. Most small business people coming in small towns, they've known many of their customers for years and years and years. Their own fear is causing the inertia, but it's real.
Is it going to be that the younger customer that is more internet savvy is going to come in with more information and going to do more comparative shopping than ever before?
I think we're seeing that every single day. More and more and more of it. The millennials. I mean, you watch a movie. With my daughter-in-law, I watch a movie and instantly she can tell me when the actor was born and all the information because she's got her phone in her hand. That's their generation. Although we look and we're concerned about pricing, I think the biggest culprit and the biggest opportunity at the same time is the technology. As these vehicles sell less parts per driven mile, we're going to be driven to making the money in labor, and it's really a good thing. Shops are going to make more money, those who embrace it.
Do you ever envision someday that an electric vehicle that comes in would have a different labor rate than an internal combustion engine?
That's a great question, but I think we do now with this labor-intensive and diagnostic rate.
Okay.
Yes, I think it absolutely
the
will.
Labor-intensive rate, which is really saying, I'm not going to make as much on parts. Is there a different definition for the labor rate that includes parts at cost? Did you ever come up with a different, so in the industry, we can actually parse out exactly what we're talking about?
I have a formula. Just say this, and it determines, based upon your parts labor mix, okay, and your normal profit that you make on parts, it calculates your labor and your parts gross profit combined per billed hour. That's a definitive number, and it would be different for every shop, depending on what percent of the business is labor and parts and so forth. Now, what I have forms, every time they do a job where they know they're going to make less than average profit, but all that talent, skills, and expense are there. An example of that would be selling a dealership part, where they typically make half of what they make if they install a part bought from a parts store.
But they shouldn't, and they should make up their normal margin, Vin.
They should. And what this formula will allow them to do is sell that dealership part at their cost and use their labor-intensive rate and then menu price it. And it takes them from below average profit exactly to average, not a cent more.
Okay.
So they don't price themselves out of the market.
A listener emailed me the other day and said he's really struggling with making margin, and he's buying more and more dealer parts than he ever has before. I mean, we know the answer to his problem, but he's not willing to charge his normal margin on buying a dealer part. He believes that he needs to sell it for that list price and live with a 20%. So I suggested that he has a different labor rate, and I think there's a lot of guys that have a fear of making those really tough decisions, like you said.
That's really what it is. We're all that way. So all small business owners, we're just afraid of losing the customer. I feel they're not going to have a choice. The good news is carpenters and plumbers and electricians solved this a long time ago. And I'm going to give you a simple example. If you sold 100 in labor and you made 40% profit on those parts, which is above average, I might add, you'd have made $40. If you sold $100 in labor and you paid your technician $20, you made $80. So the revenue is 50-50, but the profit is double in labor than what is in parts. And once they start realizing we don't have a choice, in my opinion. We're going to be faced with it just because the less and less parts per driven mile and the way the vehicles are engineered. We're going to have to do it sooner or later. And I say sooner because they're going to need the money to buy the equipment. Where it's going to pay off is staying abreast of everything cutting edge, all the technology, all the latest vehicles. Because if shops don't change so they can address those vehicles, they're going to be out of business because all they'll be left with is older vehicles. People will make decisions driving a new vehicle, driving maybe by a shop and see older vehicles in the yard and may make a decision. This guy doesn't know the new stuff. I'm not going there anymore. The customer doesn't even have a chance to defend himself.
Hi, Carm here, and I want to talk to you about the Napa Auto Care Center program for health insurance. We've all heard the reports about the rising cost of health insurance, but you'll be happy to know I'm here with really good news. The Napa Insurance Center is now offering the Napa National Health Program, and it's saving Napa Auto Care Centers and their employees money, lots of money. In fact, in the first 90 days following the launch of the program, Napa stores and auto care centers and their employees saved over $2.7 million. That's all thanks to the Napa Insurance Center's partnership with United Healthcare. It gives auto care centers access to the national large group rates on medical insurance with premiums discounted up to 30%. Now, these rates are based on the collective purchasing potential of 22,500 Napa locations, including both Napa Auto Parts stores and Napa Auto Care Centers. And listen to this. The news just keeps getting better. You can choose from 4 excellent United Healthcare medical plans with varying levels of coverage and deductibles to meet a range of needs. All plans are PPOs, preferred provider organizations, with comprehensive coverage. Because of the Napa Insurance Center's partnership with Aflac, you can have access to supplemental insurance benefits, including disability, accident, hospital, and more, all at a Napa-only discount, up to 35%. The Napa Benefits Center can help you with other group benefits too, including group life insurance, retirement, HSAs, and more. Napa's National Health Benefit Program is just one of the many reasons to become part of the Napa Auto Care family, the largest network of independent automotive repair shops in the country. Talk to your servicing Napa store. For more detailed information about the Napa National Health Program, visit the Napa Benefits Center at www.napabenefitscenter.com or call the Napa Benefits Center at 844-627-2123. Well, thanks for giving us a follow-up to episode 427 that we did together. And what I really want to talk about with you is all the work that you've done on the financial GPS.
Yeah, and that's my baby. I might add that Napa sent out to all their auto care customers, inviting them to participate. And what the auto care GPS is, the first time we did it was 2004. We provide benchmarks in 66 different categories for all shops, and the average of the top 25% most profitable shops. And it's based on net profit. Okay. So 3 out of 4 shops, and how does 1 out of 4 shops do? And the first time we published that was 2004. And like I say, benchmarks are important, but today, the way the vehicles are changing, the way we're going to have to manage our labor better and so forth, it's indispensable. So this year we're coming out with one for collision centers and heavy duty truck centers, as well as the updated new auto care version.
Vin, if it came out in 2004 and here we are in 2019, that's a long time. Did it really help the industry by being able, you're laughing, did it really help the industry improve its financial status?
It's published every 2 years. Benchmarks have a shelf life. They don't last very long.
Okay.
And it's going to be changing more and more and more.
If it comes out every 2 years and I have a chance to lay my numbers up against them and look at actually, say what my advertising investment and expense is against the national standard, have you found people working to run a better business by either increasing revenue, gross margin, and cutting costs? Is it designed to help run a more profitable business?
Yeah, we call it a GPS for a purpose, so that you know where you stack up against in 66 different parameters. I'll give you an example. Most coaches do a wonderful job and they pay attention to the big numbers, labor sales, parts sales, and profit and expenses and net profit, all those things. They're important. But there are little minutiae sometimes, things that have a huge impact on your business. And an example I give is the last number I knew, there were 34,000 McDonald's worldwide. I personally have never seen one boarded up. You and I could probably make a better hamburger than they do, but I wouldn't want to compete with them in business. And why? Because they all define their income and expenses exactly the same way. You look at one financial statement, you're looking at 34,000 financial statements. And if somebody's off just a tweak, they can either fix it or they can't, but they know. I'll give you a simple example for an independent repair shop. Let's say that you come to me and you say, Vin, I'm really concerned. My sales have been flat for the last 2 or 3 months. And I'm really concerned. And so I say, let me ask you, is anything going on in your market area that's maybe a business folded up or a company pulled away or something like that? No, everything's normal. So I say, now I know the average of the top 25% most profitable shops spend about 2.24% to sales and advertising. So let's just say that I went through all your expenses and I find out that you spend 1% of your sales on advertising. I may conclude, well, one of the reasons your sales may be down is you're spending less than half of what everybody else spends. But then let's just say I went back and I looked through all your expenses and I found out you do spend the correct amount of money. You just didn't have it defined that way. That's the importance of a chart of accounts. And just a quick example, when Dad was in business, if he advertised in the yellow pages, which is obsolete, and he spent $500 or $600 a month, it came on his telephone bill. So he overstated telephone and understated advertising. The total expenses were the same. But when we define them all the same way by this chart of accounts, I come along and I find out you're spending 1% of sales in advertising. So I may think your sales are down because you're spending less than half of what everybody else spends. But then I dig down further and I find out, holy, no. You do spend the correct amount of money on advertising. You just don't have it formatted the same way. So now I take a look and I say, well, you're advertising. There's nothing crazy in your market area. Where are you advertising? Maybe if you're in a metropolitan area, you don't want to hit anybody more than 3 to 5 miles in your wildest dream from your shop. Okay. Maybe if you're in a rural area in the country, you don't want to hit anybody more than 12 to 15 miles in your wildest dream. And we find out that you're in cable television in Boston and it's broadcasting in Buffalo. You like the looks of your face and the sound of your voice, but no one's from Buffalo is going to come to you. So we dig down. Let's say we dug down further and we found out, A, you are spending the correct amount of money in advertising, and B, you are spending either 3 to 5 miles or 12 to 15 miles, targeting the right areas, proximity to your shop, and your sales are still flat. And there's nothing going on in the market area. Then maybe I just may drill down and say, hey, it's possibly you. Maybe you're pricing yourself out of the market. Maybe your service isn't as good as you thought it was.
Maybe you have no 5-star reviews.
Exactly. Maybe you're on Yelp with 2 stars. There's an old stat that says 96% of people who are dissatisfied with a service provider, whether it be a plumber or an electrician or an auto repair shop, they will vote with their feet if they have the choice because they don't like the confrontation. So an example, I always say to a shop, how many of us have gone to a restaurant before and didn't go back? And we may not even consciously know why we didn't go back. It might have been the ambience or the food or whatever it might be. And what happens is 3 weeks later, some friends or family come on and they say, hey, let's get a bite to eat at this restaurant. You go, no, let's go here. I doubt anybody went to the owner and say, I wanted to talk to the owner, the manager, or chef, and say that I didn't come back because your food was only adequate, or I didn't like the lighting or the ambiance. What happens is they don't go back. So the owner and manager and chef have no idea there's an issue with their business and nothing changes. And what was the tip? It was simply that your advertising was out of line as a percent. It made me ask the questions. There's 66 categories like that. Beyond the big things, the obvious, the parts profit, the labor profit, there's lots of little things like that. Who would have thought that your advertising being out of line, we boil it down to service or lack of?
I love the idea, Vin, that, like you say, 34,000 McDonald's have the same identical P&L, and you can really dive in and see where any of their issues are. I'm sure a lot of it has to do with process and customer service, timing and stuff. But in our industry, wow, what a fabulous set of KPIs to be able to drill into what we're spending on uniforms, what we're spending on, all health benefits and employee benefits. It's all there. And what are they in the form of? Return on sales? They're a percentage of the revenue?
Well, okay, there are 39 categories that are measured as a percent of sales, yes.
Okay, percent of sales. And does our industry, when you sit down with somebody for the first time, do they really appreciate and understand what return on sales or ROS really is?
Once you explain what it is, it's a relative relationship. But even some of that goes obsolete. Like measuring payroll as a percent of sales or as a percent of gross profit is an obsolete measurement. So there's other measurements as well, like formulas and so forth. Labor sales per tech. Sales per work order, other things. There's other things to look at. Payroll to sales is probably every CEO has always looked at that as the golden thing because everyone measures payroll because it's controllable. You can lay somebody off if you needed to, right? But payroll to sales and payroll to gross profit in the repair business is obsolete. And I'll give you an example. Your labor is $100 an hour and you paid me $1 an hour flat rate. Right? Let's say you paid me $1 an hour flat rate. And if I didn't bill out, you didn't pay me. That means you're a little cheap and I'm a little dumb. however you hired me. And so this week I billed out 10 hours of labor. So I sold 10 times 100 is 1,000 in labor. Let's say I sold 1,000 in parts. I took in $2,000 and you have a payroll of $10, right? 1/100% to sales type thing, right? Way less than 1% of sales. Yeah, you'd have the fantastic looking work orders, but you'd still go out of business. Okay, because the owner didn't see the invisible sign that said, I'm closed the remaining 30 hours out of 40 and just keep the expenses running. Okay, and every shop owner in this planet knows that the cost of running any repair facility is way higher than the cost of any one employee. So measuring payroll to sales and gross profit is not an accurate measurement anymore. We have other things that are easier to measure, easier and more accurate, like labor sales per technician, that sort of thing.
Vin, is gross profit per hour becoming important?
Yes, per billed hour. Yes, I think it's critical because that's the foundation. You have to know what your normal profit is per hour. And when you do jobs that make less than that, that's where you use your recovery rate. For example, you're not going to make the same money if you do 5 hours to install a rear main seal and the seal is $40. You're not going to make the same money if you spend 15 hours to install an engine. You're not going to make the same money if you spend 3 hours and sell dealership parts where you only made 20% and your normal profit was, say, 40. There's lots of jobs like that, and they have always been a part of our industry. But there's less forgiveness today because one of the reasons is the way the vehicles are engineered. They're better quality. For a long time, we've sold less parts per driven mile. And in the last episode, we talked about spark plugs, the classic example, when Dad replaced them every 12,000 miles. So if you had a V8, you bought, sold, and installed 96 spark plugs in 100,000 miles, and then you threw the vehicle away. Today, you're going to sell spark plugs every 100,000 miles.
So the GPS, you must have the top performers listed somewhere that you can literally take your numbers and apply them against the best shops in the survey. And I can't imagine the value that would bring someone.
I'm obviously too close to it. I can't think of a better value. For an example, it'll say, a profitable shop today, I'm looking, their labor wants to be 53 to 55% of sales. So if you did $100, $53 of that should have been labor. If you did $100 and $47 of that labor, and 47 of those dollars was labor and $53 was parts, you're upside down. And the thing about parts is you always make 100% quarter on parts. If I bring my vehicle to your shop and it's malfunctioning, it's not going to function properly until you put whatever part it needs. If it needs brakes, it gets the brakes. But what happens is sometimes you don't sell the labor. Even if you don't change, you should be selling more labor than parts because you're selling less parts per driven mile. But if you are selling more parts than labor, there's some legitimate reasons for it. A few, very few. One would be large sales like engines or transmissions, maybe dealership parts, high-end Audi, BMW, Volkswagen, Mercedes. Those would be legitimate reasons. But other than that, if you're selling more parts than labor, it's probably a red flag. And that's going to continue to go. It's going to continue to go more. The higher percentage will be labor and the lower percentage will be parts, just the way the vehicles are designed. And again, I go back to my Toyota Tesla example. 30,000 parts versus 10,000 parts. That's a 2/3 deduction in parts alone.
So Vin, the GPS looks like a great tool. How do people get it?
Okay, first of all, it's a Napa tool, but not limited. Okay, we publish from every year, and the Napa Auto Care customers get it automatically. It's also on the Napa website. So if you type in your user and password, you can download it and get it from Napa. But also, when I do my classes around the country, anybody can attend my classes, and they also get a copy of the GPS. They could probably get it from the Napa salesperson. They could get it by attending my class, and this is not a push for that. Or if they're Auto Care, they can automatically download it. As far as accessing and getting the labor-intensive and diagnostic rates, the formulas that will do all those calculations for you, you'll go on my website, vinwaterhouse.com, and the password, you'll see a calculator, and you'll click to it. And when it requests access, the password is Vin Waterhouse Napa Auto Care. No spaces, no hyphens, no capital letters. Vin Waterhouse Napa Auto Care. All one word.
Thank you so much for giving us. Are you going to be at the Napa Expo 2020?
I am, and I'm looking forward to it.
Good. I'll be there too. We must get together and probably do another episode.
Let's make sure that we get together, Carm. And by the way, my topic at Expo is going to be thriving in a changing market. And it's going to be about dealing with the internet pricing, less parts sold per vehicle, labor-intensive diagnostic rates. It's going to be focused only on that.
I think it's a trend we have to be concerned with. I think we have to get as much education as possible. And I think we need to look inside of our business and figure out how we're going to assimilate it and continue to be as profitable as we can.
The amazing thing is, this is all going to be to our benefit. And here's why. As we go into labor-intensive and diagnostic labor rates, they're higher labor rates. Agreed?
Mm-hmm.
So if you remember, I do a program called 3 minutes in an hour. At $100 an hour, 3 minutes an hour is $1,020 a month in labor profit per technician. But at a labor-intensive and diagnostic rate, let's say a labor-intensive rate is 140 and a diagnostic rate is 167, it's going to be even more.
Mm-hmm.
So as our shops take advantage of the training, the equipment, the technology, and ride it and encourage it, they're going to be making so much money, they're going to be buying their technicians' tools for them. Techs are no longer going to be buying their own tools. Owners are going to be able to do that. And it'll be a business expense to the owner, and it'll be a pay raise to the technicians. I see all good coming out of this. I'm really excited about the changes.
Wow. Hey, thanks. I love your energy. I'll always have. Thank you so much for bringing it on for our second episode together. Vin Waterhouse, president and founder of the Waterhouse Group, an automotive accounting, training, and coaching company. Thanks, Vin.
Thank you, Carm. Take care.
Thanks for being on board to listen and learn from the premier automotive aftermarket podcast. Until next time.